Morning and welcome back to New Day. It's time for our Monday morning legal discussion. And this morning we're talking about mob injustice in our chamber.
It's not unusual to have images of brutalities being meted out to suspected criminals by vigilantes. Now, mob justice or street court or whatever you may choose to call it is a term being used to define such injustice. Now, we're being joined by legal practitioner Eric Delano Alifu of Help Law Ghana. When we look at the criminal code, is there any room for mob justice?
There's no room for mob justice at all. The issue is about arrest, actually. We call it citizen's arrest or arrest by a private person of a suspected criminal or somebody who may have committed a crime. That is the issue. What normally happens is that once such people are arrested, people beat them up and they torture them and lynch them mostly. In our criminal code, actually the Criminal and Other Offences Act, Act 30 of 1960, there's room for citizens' arrest, there's room for private persons to arrest suspected criminals, but it's only under certain conditions. And if you are not sure about those conditions, then you probably don't have to engage in that at all. The circumstances for such arrest is that when an offense is being committed in the presence of a private person, and there's a use of violence or force in committing that offense, or maybe if it's fraud or stealing or damage to property, if there's injury to property, a private property. If it's a private property, then it should be a private property of the person who is causing that, who is arresting that person's property or property that is in custody of that person. If anybody is causing injury to that property, you have the right to arrest the person. Also, if a public property is being damaged, for instance, and in your presence, then you can arrest. Now, here is where it is a bit murky. If you reasonably suspect that a crime has been committed by a person, then you can arrest that person. But that crime must have been committed. You have to be very sure. You can't just suspect that a crime was committed when indeed that crime was not committed. And if it turns out that that crime was not committed, then you would be in trouble. And so you have to be very sure that the crime was indeed committed. These crimes are creation of the law. It is a law that makes a particular act a crime. You may suspect that somebody has stolen or somebody has committed an offense. You need to, because these offenses are created by the law, so you need to hand over the person to the police, to law enforcement agencies, to process the person and send the person to court and take the person through the proceedings for a judge to pronounce that person as having stolen. It is only after that that person can be punished.
Can we say that people are misinterpreting citizen arrest?
I think so. I suspect strongly that most of the people who take part in these activities know that they are doing the wrong thing. I suspect, that's my personal suspicion. They know it is not right to lynch, but also, some of them have bases, it may be right or wrong. They think that, well, when these cases are reported to the police, it takes too slow for these cases to be dealt with. And sometimes they do see some of these people back in their society because the people may have gone through the system and may have been granted bail, for instance, or the person may have been acquitted and discharged when the person gets to court and all of that. But that is the law. That is the law. That is the process. If the process is not right, the authorities that are in charge of the process may appeal. If they think that there was anything wrong with the process and the decision is wrong, they may appeal.
Now let's look at the police service. Most people were saying they mistrust the police to effectively deal with suspected criminals who are brought to the police stations. What can be done to address such mistrust?
The police have to be up and doing. They have to try to do the right thing. And then secondly, I think that for most of these issues, the police should have a good PR unit that would explain some of these things to the public, especially in high-profile cases. Elsewhere, the police always organize press conference, and then they brief the public on what is going on in a particular case, a particular investigation. We have arrested, we have not arrested, we are looking for, and all of that. This country, it is not like that. And so everything is shrouded in secrecy, and it's difficult to know what the police is doing. Sometimes they just follow the due process, and then the people still get out. But people will still mistrust them because they think that, well, they probably have collected money from the people, There's a history of police collecting money.
Can we say that the police, they find it difficult to identify individuals who partake in mob justice, and since it has become difficult, it's very hard for education to go down well, that if you partake in mob justice and you're arrested, you could serve a jail time?
Education is not for people who have already committed this crime. Education is especially for all of us, so that you don't even step in first. You see, the problem I do have with most people is that by the time they come to me, by the time they ask for my services, they have committed the crimes already. The education is much more for people who have not committed these crimes yet. Obviously, it will be difficult for the police to identify, because normally it will not be 1 or 2 or 3 people who attack these people who engage in this. There will be a lot. And then, like I said earlier on, some would attack and leave. By the time the person even dies, nobody may even be there, so in most cases, I believe that somebody, especially now that we have cameras on our phones, somebody may have taken a photograph, or somebody may have seen 1 or 2 people and report them to the police, and they take them as scapegoats. So they arrest one person and that's it. But it is not that person alone who beat them up, who beat the person up, or who lynched the person. But once that person is grabbed, 1 or 2 are grabbed, well, then they process them, and it appears as if they charge them as if they have murdered the person all by themselves.
If someone is arrested for partaking in mob justice, what are the charges the person can be fined with, and what punishments can be meted out to such a person?
Well, it depends on the end results of that action, the mob action. If a person dies, if the victim dies out of it, then clearly I believe I have a few cases where they have been charged with murder. I would think that it should be manslaughter, but these are issues that would be dragged in court, because then for murder they will have to show that whoever took part in it had the intention to kill, or the person knew very well that action that is taken could lead to the death of the person, and yet the person was reckless and went ahead to take the action. So they need to show all of this. Other than that, it may be manslaughter. But it depends. If the person is not dead, then the issue of murder or manslaughter will be out completely. It may be simple battery and assault, for instance. Yeah. So it depends on the end results of the action.
A person who was a victim of mob justice, can a person sue the people who partook in the mob action?
Yes, if you are lucky and they didn't kill you, of course. It's a criminal action, per se, criminal action, because if they attack somebody, it's a criminal action. But I believe also that you may be able to have some remedy in civil suit if you can identify the people and you need some compensation from them.